Now, if you're anything like me, you wouldn't mind having a little less of the brunch belly and a little less of the, well, let's face it, let's call them boobs. Particularly as we get older, diet and our physicality is something that really affects men's image and begins to really impact our mental health. Welcome back to the mental space, where we are at the Lighthouse Retreat, beautiful setting here in Ras Al Khaimah. And I'm here once again with Simon Dunn, founder of the Lighthouse Retreat. Now, the reason why we're here, the Lighthouse Retreat and mentl have teamed up to offer a men's retreat to introduce us to lots of things that can help us take control of our lives, give us tools, both how to look after our physical bodies, but also our mental health. And boy, do we need them. The Cigna research recently showed that 98% of people in the UAE are struggling with their mental health. And again, a massive desire for people to change their lives and seek a better balance. So today, Simon and I are going to be talking about our men's retreat that we're going to be putting on. And one of the things we've got on the menu of activities, and there's lots going on, is fasting. Mm-hmm. Now, I've been watching podcasts left, right, and center. I've just hit 50. The man spread is really beginning to spread. It's getting harder and harder to try and keep the weight off. But it's not necessarily just the weight, is it? There's a lot more going on to what's actually inside here. Very much so. I think with fasting as well, it's a really useful tool. Yeah. There are different ways in terms of how it can be applied and the usefulness of it. But you're right. There's a lot of elements with obviously what we're eating, how we're eating, and when as well. And obviously we've got an element of what we're talking about in terms of our gut and our gut microbiome, which tends to also influence our behaviors and our decision-making as well. Really? Quite massively, yeah. So you can actually have a predominantly sugar-based gut microbiome that craves sugar. And it actually sends signals to your brain and in terms of your behaviors and says, I need more sugar. So especially if we're eating elements of high sugar diets, processed foods, lots of additives, that type of way, the microbiome dictates, well, it's living off those sugars and actually wants more. So it drives you in your behavior in terms of what you eat, how you eat it, and obviously, that obviously affects of what we do in a negative way, mostly. So it's important to try and get our gut health where we need it in terms of how we feel, very much so. So let's pause for a second, because often, we do, and society tells us we want to look a certain way. And I wouldn't mind looking a little bit more like that. But in terms of how these things manifest in our life, how what's going on inside our stomach, what's going on inside our gut, how does that actually manifest? Because we talk about performance, we're talking about how our body's reacting. If we're talking about being at work, or we're actually being being family life, so we've got work and life balance, how important is diet in terms of, you were saying, decision making? Yeah. How does it how do good behaviors show up in our lives versus how are bad behaviors showing? How is it impacting us? Let's just frame this in the workplace to start with. Sure. I mean, obviously, practicalities of comfort eating and sort of ingesting calories on the run and on the go, impact of normally what we can eat and what's available to us. And those elements in terms of satiation of what we eat drives how we feel in terms of our blood sugar levels. And obviously, as an extension of that, our ability to make good decisions on how we feel. So if you're feeling hungry and you're feeling like you need sugar, or you're irritable, are you going to be making good decisions at work or at home, or as extension where we are? So you ride this curve of peaks and troughs of sugar and elements of coffee breaks or bits and pieces where, you're feeling like you want something or you need something to keep that sugar buzz up or caffeine buzz up. And finding that, we feeling like you have to have these elements. So decision making definitely is impacted of how we feel and our sugar and elements of satiation as well, which is really interesting. heard a lot about fasting, and I know there are different types of fasting. And actually, the previous episode of this podcast, we talked about Chris Hemsworth, and his new documentary Limitless, in which even Thor is leaning into his mental health and his physicality, and he's looking at longevity. He's looking at trying to be peak performance for longer than to lengthen that, and then also be around for his kids for as long as possible. And when a physical specimen such as Chris Hemsworth is leaning into it, then again, men, maybe it's time for us to lean in. As part of that documentary, I think he did something like a 3-day fast, which seems a little bit extreme to me. But just talk us through the overlying, like the helicopter view of the benefits of fasting to start with. What's the science here?
Sure. So, as I said, there's different regimen in terms of how you look at fasting.
Yeah.
People have probably heard of something called intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Or 16 and 8 fasting.
I've tried it.
So when we're talking about 16 and 8 fasting, you're trying to fast for 16 hours, and then any calories you ingest within an 8-hour window.
Okay.
There are several variations on that where you can slightly decrease it. The thought process is that historically, hundreds of thousands of years ago, thousands of years ago, food wasn't necessarily readily available to us. It wasn't as if we could go, right, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
So the body works in a specific way. When you are ingesting calories, it's working on trying to burn these calories. So when we have an element of fasting, the body has a rest in a way in terms of processing those calories. And if you can get into a state of at least 12 to 16 hours of fasting, you're talking about something where the body goes into autophagy or autophagy, which is sometimes called cell death or cell cleansing, where the body starts getting rid of all the junk in the system and burning the rubbish up. So it's really interesting in terms of when you get to that state, autophagy, and also by extension also ketosis, where the body cleans itself out and then using its own sources to burn fuel. It's not necessarily from a sugar system that we're ingesting carbs all the time. So your body gets to clean itself out. Your blood sugar levels get to normalize, so you haven't got these peaks and troughs, which is really important, because obviously you've got talking about insulin spikes, and where your body spikes with insulin depending on what you're eating, and that obviously affects your blood sugar as a result, and obviously how you feel. So there's when Chris Hemsworth talking about 3-day fast, we're probably talking about you have something called a water fast, where you would do for an extended period of time, and you would only take in water and electrolytes with no sugars, no carbs. So it's not Gatorade, so to speak. It's more like water with your salts. And then your body goes into a state of autophagy really quickly. So your body starts cleaning the system out. Your skin becomes clearer. Your eyes become clearer. It's really good in terms of skin issues as well. A lot of skin elements are what you would probably call either gut related or autoimmune inflammation related. So your body sort of sits a hard reset. So one of the first retreats I had the opportunity to go to is something you would probably call a fasting mimicking regime. So you're ingesting like maybe 200-300 calories a day. You're working quite a lot on your gut health with columars, and your body gets into this state of autophagy and it cleans the system out. So the longest I ever went on one of those was about 10 days. But there were individuals doing over 20 days. Not for everybody, of course, but these individuals doing like the extended fasting mimicking regimes had amazing energy, amazing clarity. Some of their health issues had improved massively because you're getting rid of elements of foods that may not serve you in a way that your body's having to work either very hard to process or actually has reactions to it. So it doesn't really know what to do with it. So quite often you have oils and certain carbs and additives that the body doesn't know what to do with. So because it doesn't know what to do, it sort of panics and sort of stores it and does something with it. And then you get all this accumulated rubbish, which normally gets accumulated in our fat cells because the body has nowhere else to put it. So then,
fair enough.
No, it happened. But then conversely, when you actually go into these fasting states and you burn this fat, you actually have times when you feel pretty rubbish because the body's burning fat, but is then re-ingesting chemicals it had in its system from many years ago, but it's stored as fat, but it has to clean it out first.
Now, important to stress, we're going to actually have workshops on fasting and the benefits of fasting and diet over the 3-day workshop that we're going to hold together. The 3-day retreat we're going to hold together. People will get to eat,
of course,
for the 3 days. So we're going to introduce you to fasting and the science behind it, and actually the diet and the food that we've got laid on as part of it is all complementary to that. And I think the way you've got the schedule planned out as well enables us to do that intermittent fasting. Should people wish, should the guys wish to lean into it, but you don't actually have to do it, but it's all there laid out for you to actually try it and see how you feel.
That's it. So the program that we have, our normal retreat schedule and the schedule we're going to do for the men's retreat, we have sort of a late breakfast and an early dinner.
Yeah.
So subconsciously, you're doing an intermittent 16 and 8 fasting.
Yeah.
With the idea is that, and this has been scientifically proven as well, you want to try and get sunlight early in the morning, sort of kickstart your metabolism and even some cortisol as well. And you want to try and do some sort of level of activity. Preferably if you do that in the morning, the better as well, because again, it sets your metabolism level for the day. And then if you do activity in a fasted state, you actually have more fat metabolism that goes on, activation within the system. So the fasting tool and how you use your physical activity is a really useful tool to sort of help you with stubborn elements of fat or weight loss or anything, because it helps you generate a behavior pattern, but also activation of certain elements. So you're fasted, you're doing cardio or work elements, and then doing that in a way that is really beneficial for you. So our food program, we have breakfast after 10 o'clock and dinner by 5:30. So we're pretty much there in 16 and 8, and we do a mostly raw vegan menu. This is not to say that everyone has to be vegan, by the way. It's just we're increasing fiber and good quality macros distribution in your food that allows your gut microbiome to reset a little bit. So it's not really focused on the sugars, your carbs, your pastas, your processed foods. And we don't do any coffee in the retreat, which for some people is an issue. Obviously,
it's 3 days. We can
3 days,
but I think that's fascinating as well, because that's the whole idea about this retreat is for us as guys to just lean into some of this stuff, give it a go, see how you feel.
Yes,
and as you said previously on the previous podcast before, it's so we can kind of choose the things that work for us. So this is more an opportunity just to go, all right, let's explore how we feel when we do these kind of practices and activities. And if anyone's worried about, oh man, I'm going to be so hungry, all I'm going to be thinking about is the next meal. Thankfully, we've got so much interesting and kind of fun stuff going on during the 3-day retreat that's going to keep you kind of occupied anyway. Let's talk about, I always want to talk about some of the other stuff that we've got going on. So we're going to be doing workshop, we're going to be doing fasting, we're going to be looking at diet and what that really does to us, both physically and here in the head. We're going to be just doing some physical stuff as well. And the first time I ever did yoga was here. And if anyone thinks that yoga is just like some soft, gentle workout, man, it was a bit of a brute. It was a good workout. So we're going to be looking at yoga and the benefits of yoga, and we've also got paddle boarding. Just talk us through the benefits of kind of both practice, because obviously they're very different things, but why we've got those in our program.
Sure. So we do yoga in the schedule, and we try and do that in the morning as a first activity of the day. So, yoga has this stigma, in elements. You're going to be a fairly slender young lady who's going to be able to turn on, like a pretzel and do all these.
I am definitely not that.
Really flexible. That's, I think, obviously there's the Instagram element of that and the traditional Indian Hindu element of being super flexible. But yoga in itself is a fantastic practice. It really focuses on finding balance of breath work with movement. So I'm a qualified yoga instructor. I am not your atypical body shape or size. And I'm not super flexible, but I'm more flexible and more capable than I used to be. And it's not a case of that yoga is about, the chanting or really spiritual element, is using it as a really tried and tested practice of movement that really allows you to improve your strength, your stamina, your breath work, your flexibility. And yoga can be quite challenging, but it doesn't have to be. But I think any element of yoga is really positive in terms of what we do. We are quite sedentary in our modern life, in terms of sitting down. We're not really designed for sitting. In terms of, we normally be traditionally lying or moving around, standing up activity. So elements of even our physiology in terms of our lymphatic system depend on us moving. And we've sort of lost that in the modern life. And getting that element of movement in terms of moving our body, getting our system working as it used to be, that's where we should be. And any preconceptions of, especially guys doing yoga, I don't want to do yoga, it's silly. I understand that. The yoga we do is not super, not super technical. It's open to everybody. We have different options for those who've never done yoga before. And it's actually quite interesting because yoga in itself gives you an element of controlling strength, which is very different from other elements of exercise, like gym work, for example. We've had individuals come through that are quite strong people, but you get them to do elements of yoga, but they really struggle in terms of control, stability, movement and breath. And it's really good for finding that balance, I think.
It feels as well, because again, if we're talking about the C-suite, we're talking about, this retreat could be from any of the guys from age 20 through to age 50, 60.
Absolutely.
Look, I've just hit 50. How often am I getting, lower back aches? How often am I getting shoulder aches? Because, I'll go out on the golf course and the way I play golf, I hit the ground more than I hit the ball. But increasingly, when we then rock up at the doctors will then push us to the physiotherapist. And the physiotherapist will then give us a bunch of exercises to do, which is basically yoga. And if we were to rebrand yoga as performance stretching in a way, I don't think any of us would have an issue with it. So it kind of is like the older we get, the more it seems like there is a need for yoga in our lives, because it's, I'm sick of taking, Voltaren, other painkillers are available. But you know what I mean? Like, we are often, as guys, we want to stay active, and we've got kids, my 7-year-old, I'm lifting her all the time. But then there's inflammation all over the place. How does yoga help with that? Just like, if we've got this in our daily lives, are we going to be able to operate, on that physical level better?
Yes, a difficult one to, in terms of wrap it up as simply as that. However, I think anything that is done, any movement, any physicality, anything breath work, centering wise, is positive. Obviously, modern life, say, well, I don't have an hour for yoga. I don't have 35 minutes for yoga. I don't have, I'm very busy. It's true. I think elements is trying to find, 2 minutes of something is better than none. 5 minutes is better than 2. But introducing these elements, and so obviously you don't always have an hour and a half to do yoga.
No.
Do a private practice, or find a private practice that is yoga or something that is similar that works for you, and start with 2 minutes. Even if it's breath work or going for a walk or something positive, build that up. And it's just, you have time, but we are busy, but it's something is better than nothing.
I was talking to we had Rangan Chatterjee on the podcast recently, and he was talking about exactly as you say, even if it is breath work, or if it is even 5 minutes of yoga, like, you are able to add that on to something you're doing anyway, whether it's you're boiling the kettle, or you're making, you're cooking something, and while you're waiting for that to cook, you can then automatically go, right, this is my time to do 5 or 10 minutes. So that's, I totally get why we should be embracing yoga as something that I, as a 50-year-old, want to do more of. Time's against us on this podcast, but just, again, we're going to have paddleboarding in here as well. What does paddleboarding give us? That's very more physical, but give us a reason why we've got paddleboarding in there.
So the paddleboarding we do at the retreat, because we've got this amazing lagoon right behind us, obviously, but it's a case of getting out in the sun, getting physicality, and doing something that's fun. Me personally, always, growing up as a kid and obviously into adulthood and playing professional sport was that, I hated the gym. With a passion. However, if someone said, let's go and play 2 hours of tennis, I'd quite happily do the tennis. But going to the gym for 2 hours, I'd prefer not to but that was what my makeup was. With paddleboarding, we are doing something fun out in nature, in the open air, in the sunshine, which has elements of grounding, elements of fitness, elements of receiving sunlight, but doing something fun that's different and just being in nature. And we're making the most of those amazing natural elements that we have here at the retreat, but also giving people different experiences. So even on the paddleboard, you've got elements of balance.
I'm going to say, I'm going to take the win. Like if I am actually able to stand on that board, that's going to be beneficial to me just going, well, that's an achievement in itself.
It is, and it's harder than it looks. You've got elements of core strength in terms of balance, stability with your core and your glutes, your feet are sort of micro moving, all these elements. And we actually do yoga on the boards as well on our normal retreat, which is kind of fun. So
all right, let's walk before we could. Well, let's
it's
stand.
True, but it's a really fun element. It's something that we have available to us, and it's a new experience as well. And there's an element of physicality, but if we can introduce fun to all this great environment stuff that we're doing as well, that's really positive.
Brilliant. Simon, thank you again for joining us today on the Mental Space. And if you are interested in joining us at this men's retreat here at the Lighthouse Retreat here in Ras Al Khaimah, we've got a packed program. As you heard today, we've got paddleboarding, we've got yoga, we've got workshops on fasting. If you listen to our previous podcast, and please go back and check it out, we were talking about the benefits of fire and ice, saunas, ice baths. That's also a big part of what we're going to be doing here at the retreat that's coming up. Please get in touch with us at either thementl.space or reach out to us on our LinkedIn page, or reach out to Simon at thelighthouse.retreat.com. And remind us again of the date. We're going to be holding this pretty soon. It's in the next month.
It's the 17th to the 19th of March.
17th
so that's
19th of March.
Friday to the Sunday.
Brilliant. So please check it out. And we'll be back here soon at the Lighthouse Retreat as well to talk about some of the extra things that we've got in the program. Some very exciting stuff. Thank you again, Simon.
No, welcome. Thank you.